Great. Well, I am thrilled to be here with Felí Solá-Carter. Felí is an amazing leader and a wonderful colleague and friend. She served with the Social Security Administration for 38 years, rising from claims representative to Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Human Resources, and she was a member of the Federal Senior Executive Service. She is now an inspiring and impactful senior advisor and leadership coach as a consultant, and is currently the chair of the Howard County Community College Board of Trustees. She serves to advise and encourage and challenge leaders in a wide variety of sectors, and I am blessed to call her a friend and colleague. Thanks for being here, Felí.
Well, John, or JR, as I think of you, it is a privilege to be here with you.
Awesome.
You're a long admired colleague and esteemed leader and a coach par excellence. So, and I'm particularly indebted to your help as I became a coach and the wonderful advice and tips that I get from you. I'm excited about your new venture. So any way that I can be of service. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time very much in the midst of everything that's going on. I have the clip around this theme of reach out, connect, and care. And I'm hearing, as I'm sure you are too, from folks at all different levels, that there is the need to, amidst the craziness and crush of and intensity of the tasks and the emails and the meetings and the virtual calls, to actually connect and actually care for the human beings, right, the individuals involved, and a wide variety of circumstances that people are facing. And so the theme here is called reach out, connect, and care. But I start on the point of care, because that's the foundation.
Yes.
For a leader. You can go through the mechanics, but underneath that, it really starts with, do you actually care for the people that work with you? And I'd love to hear your perspectives on this, experiences of your own, leaders you've worked with. Where have you seen leaders struggle with this? And where have you seen leaders succeed with this, caring for their people?
So, JR, I share your belief in the importance of care. I think it starts there. I very fundamentally, very basic, we're human beings, and we want to be recognized as people, as individuals, as who we are, not just as a label or a position or a title or a group or a function. You know? And to me, the successful leader is one who can genuinely connect on an individual basis with those they lead. Whether you're leading a team of 3 people or a team of 30,000 people, there has to be a way that you can make that connection. And what I urge the folks I work with to do is to think about that little individual small step you can take to make that direct connection with the person. Right? So it assumes that, or implies that, you will make yourself available to them. At a time like this, what does available mean? Does it mean only a virtual conversation? Are you a disembodied voice over a conference call? Are you using video so we can get some sense of connection there? That's one reason that I think Zoom and other techniques, other software products that allow you to do that become so popular, because there's something about being able to sense the person's expression. Okay? But I think what's also critical is that you genuinely can express your interest in the other person. What is the other person experiencing? What is their family situation? What do I need to help accomplish a task better? I believe in the concept of small steps that we can take to be genuine in our outreach, and small steps that I can take to be genuine in my feedback to you, right? So a simple thing might be to find out, how do you prefer to be reached, right? For business purposes, we have constraints and we must do certain techniques and so on, but on an individual basis, might I give you a call? Might I send you a personal text? Might I just check in with you? What works best at your end? How are you doing with your kids trying to do your job online, and while you're trying to make sure your students, your children, continue their academic studies? How are things with the household? How's the elderly parent that you're also taking care of? How are you managing the social distance? So having some way of checking in a very direct, tailored, personal way, a small step. Don't send me 20-page emails, don't send me anything of that sort, just something very simple and direct. And give me the opportunity to share with you how I prefer that you reach me. For some individuals, a text is perfect. For others, with a little emoji on there. And for some, I'd love to hear a human voice. One other way of connecting and reaching out that seems rather old-fashioned, but I have seen this work, is a good old-fashioned handwritten note. Okay. I'm an absolute believer in the importance of sharing and giving thanks and showing gratitude. And at a time like this, to take a moment to jot down a nice little thank you just for being there. Thank you for helping support our team in. Thank you for, keeping the lights on while we're going through this. And to take the time to pick out a little envelope and write it out and actually put a stamp on it and send it to snail mail. That's really a powerful, powerful message to get that. It's like a little bit of sunshine popping up in your actual mailbox, right?
I'm laughing because I had to show my 15-year-old where the stamp goes.
Yes, and how to address an envelope, because I've never done this.
No idea.
I've never done this, Riley. And what do you mean a stamp and how much or whatever?
Yeah.
But it's just those little things. So that may be something so it might be a brand new experience for a 15-year-old. Or it might be bring a wonderful memory for somebody of a different age, and so on. So small steps that you can take to make sure that person is taken care of. For instance, if you have an Audible account, send a complimentary audiobook to one of your folks. I have a friend who's sending seed packets with little pots of planting material to her friends to share with them. So this is something to keep you interested in a little bit of mental health, a little bit of sense of investing in your future in some other way. So we are limited by our creativity in how we do it. Today we have so many, YouTube has exploded with tutorials and things and so on. So doing something that's not just the ordinary, did you get the memo out? But something for you as an individual human being that reaches you, that touches you in some way.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what you're describing can work in both directions. If I know what you're particularly passionate about, your interest, hobby, something that I know you happen to love plants, or you happen to love it. Conversely, there's something that I'm passionate about and I'm sharing something about myself with you. And so both can add a lot of meaning as opposed to a generic, something that doesn't have depth.
When I think about leaders that I've had the blessing to work with, who have been very effective at times of great challenges, and particularly when I think about my experience as a Social Security executive, when we were sometimes first on the scene, when there was some kind of a hurricane or flood or activity of that sort, simply because of the way our community spread. I think of those leaders who were personally on the scene, who made it a point to make decisions, take a risk in making a decision that would actually immediately benefit both the employees and the public we serve. In the federal sector, you always have to be mindful that our ultimate client is the public we serve, is the American public. So how are we doing that? What do we need to do differently? Yeah. How do we reach that need? How do we tap into that, right? Yeah. And it's a way at a time like this to have a powerful opportunity to remind people of their personal value system and personal mission, how that ties to what we're trying to do with the organization, and how do we connect the dots. Yeah. Why does it matter that you're available to process a payment, to take information, to update data on COVID results, and so on? Why does that matter? Yeah. And why is your small part in that chain of events? How is it that you contribute? This is how you add value. And this is why I'm so grateful that you are here to help us carry this out. Because sometimes we lose sight of how the individual is part of that chain. Yeah. And if you can get overwhelmed with all that without realizing that what you do, you matter, and what you do matters.
Well, and that much more, as you're mentioning that, right? Again, some organizations and some people are front and center, and God bless them, are first responders and teachers and folks who are absolutely under pressure to continue to deliver, because what they do is needed right now. Yes. For many, this feeling of, oh, I'm at home and I'm trying to keep going, but there isn't a sense of urgency for what I do. And that has to come from, that's leadership, is making a sense of relevance and mission for your folks, for your people.
Yes, and helping the individual understand the end result of what they're doing. Yeah. How do I connect that? Why it matters that I keep you engaged, and why it matters that we do this thing, that we also taking care of not only your work activity, but your mental health, your sense of self, your sense of fun, bringing some humor into the workplace, sharing some funny quotes or inspirational quotes, whatever it might be, some simple thing, a little message of the day. Inviting others to share those. Yes.
Speak about experiences you've had and leaders you've seen some of whom, right, some leaders are naturally inclined. They have a strength in the area of compassion, empathy, emotional intelligence, etc. Others just don't, and they just really might struggle with that in whichever degree. How have you seen folks who, for whom it doesn't come naturally, seen work? What do they do? How do they overcome that? How do they make that connection when it isn't a natural inclination?
So I've had experience with leaders who are incredibly smart, I mean, gifted intellectually, truly, and I'm blessed to have them in the positions they're in, but who need the support of staff that is not reluctant to let them know when they need to do something a little differently.
Yeah.
And so I'm a strong believer in the concept of radical candor by Scott. And I believe that there are times when we need to let people know they have a little bit of spinach in their tea. And exactly. And so it is critical for leaders for whom it is not a default setting to share that empathetic understanding, to be surrounded by others who have the freedom to let them know, to help them, to course correct, and recognize that in themselves, and have someone they can check in with before they engage with the other person, or before they send a memo, or whatever it is that they're doing that might come back to haunt them in some way. If you are working with someone like that, I believe you have an obligation to help them succeed by letting them know, might we frame this message differently? Might we take this differently? There have been times when I've seen people, for the best of intentions, make decisions and promulgate decisions that will impact budget, hiring staff, what people need locally to get their jobs done, whatever the situation might be. Intellectually understanding that it's based on the right set of data and it's the right decision, but not taking the step back to understand the impact this will have on the particular individual, what that matters to them. And so that sense of stepping back, taking a look, what is the emotional impact of that? And what happens is when we don't use that emotional information that's coming back as we're choosing to discount a great deal of data that's coming at us.
And it is. For somebody to communicate in a way that could be tone deaf, not realizing the context for the people that they're working with, and they can come across as, complaining about something that is really, in the scale of things, incredibly minor, or coming across as, this is a paid vacation and it's an opportunity for me to enjoy life and to have a bottle of wine, and that's great, but you're not even realizing that your colleague is going through a devastating situation, and they're not celebrating with a bottle of wine. So that sort of sensitivity and awareness is really critical. Have you seen examples where that has worked or where it has not worked?
Yes, I recall an experience from the federal furlough, where we had some brand new employees, newly hired, who did not yet know all of their colleagues. Who all of a sudden were home, they had signed leases on apartments, they made other arrangements, they relocated, etc., and here they are. And feeling very lonely and separated. And team leaders taking it upon themselves to assign buddies to these folks. And so let me reach out, let me assign you an experienced buddy, somebody you can call on, and whatever the question is, it may have to do with processes related to work, it may have to do with something else. The sense that you're not going to be alone because there's going to be somebody else out there. Something that you might call the wingman in a different setting, right? So that idea that there is someone who is out there. Having some process in place for a quick check-in, so you can do, it doesn't take long. You can, even if you do it via a text messaging system or phone calls, and ask them, I said, so what's the news of the day at your end? What's on your mind today? How might we help?
What resources would you recommend for somebody who's trying to build their emotional intelligence? Like you said, feedback from colleagues and being surrounded by others who will be candid with you and give you honest feedback. Any particular resources, articles, books?
Well, I particularly like both the podcasts and the little videos, and some of these are just very brief, so they're not, committing hours of your life to them. By, for instance, Brené Brown, she's got some wonderful things. Her video on empathy, I think, is one of the best I have seen. I believe it's on TED Talks. She does a magnificent job in a few minutes of laying out the difference between being sympathetic and empathetic, and how to do it. She has a whole string of them and dealing with anxiety and emotional intelligence and other aspects of that. So I'm a firm believer in that and how she conveys the message. There are other authors, Carmine Gallo, who works independently and with the Wall Street Journal and others. He has some wonderful videos also in terms of business messaging and communications and other business related activities, but it's a somewhat different perspective that he brings, and they're very brief. So you're not investing 3 hours of your day to attending something. One of my favorite resources is the Harvard Business Review tip of the day, manager's tip of the day. It's free. They have a little app you can download for free. And every day they post just a little snippet, really literally just a little paragraph with something that's current and appropriate. And it may be everything from, you know, virtual team meetings to some other sophisticated concept, but you get enough of the snippet to get you thinking, you know, and being able to reach back and so on. So I like it because of the brevity and the timeliness.
And speaking of tips, so what else have you seen leaders using, teams or individuals leading from any level? What have you seen working currently in this current context to help keep teams together, to continue to strengthen the teamwork and the collaboration, those sorts of things? Any particular strategies that you see working?
So one of the most effective leaders I know is the president of our community college, Dr. Kate Hetherington. And one of the things that she has done with certainly our trustee group and others, but just at all levels of the campus, she has very frequent communications that go out to every one of the audiences that are part of the educational institution. Some are, she makes sure that she keeps the board fully engaged because of the role that we have in leadership at the school, but everyone in her leadership team, everyone in her faculty teams, in the staff, everyone from the folks whose job is to keep our campus secure and keep our facilities clean and maintained, students who are why we're there. That's why we exist as an institution, to make sure our students have a way of succeeding, and everyone in between. Frequent communication, and the communications are tailored to the audience in terms of the time, in terms of the nature, in terms of the information.
Right.
So, and cascade down through the organization. They're available through every conceivable medium. There's Facebook, there's emails that go out, there are other resources that are available online. So this sense of everyone connecting with everyone else. And considering that we have roughly 30,000 students enrolled in some fashion at our university, at our community college, excuse me, it's quite remarkable how that is done. But you have to be proactive, and you have to understand how you break down the message. And what helps in this situation is that there is a practice of continuous communication on an ongoing basis. So when the crisis occurred, it wasn't a matter of scrambling to find out who and how we're going to communicate with somebody. We already had processes in place. We're shifting to a new environment, but we have the practice already in place.
Yeah, there's some organizations have to scramble because they hadn't had stuff in place, and so better to get it in place. Better late than never. Others did have something.
JR, one of the tips I would have for folks as we're going through this, is we have not lived through a pandemic in our current generation, but I think it's useful to keep kind of a running tab on what is working for you and what is not working for you. Why would you do differently if you had to go through this again? Because I think it's empowering to be able to process what I'm experiencing, realize what is helping, realize what I wish I had done differently, what I wish I had known that I don't know, and then take that and make that into how might I do this differently the next time? How about I apply it to other sessions? So that gives you a sense of some control over your own circumstances in terms of
and next time might be the next video call. You know, it might be the next message you send out. It's you know, not only the next crisis or the next situation month, but even just the next interaction, the next call, the next, you know, communication. What did I learn from today that I can use? And
exactly. I'm a great believer in continuous learning, and that means that we have to continuously assess where we are and what we need to do differently. What are we learning? What is the takeaway? How can I improve? How can I do this better? How can I be ready for the next one? And you're absolutely right. And we are. It's also something that type of insight and thoughtfulness about what exactly am I experiencing. What am I taking out of this experience? What are the gaps? What are the skills that I'm now developing as a result of this? What are the opportunities? My goodness, you know, when you hear about all the ways in which we're using media now. So balancing it helps you balance the downsides with the upsides, right? Finding silver linings everywhere. You know, there's that phrase that we use when we talk about leading change. What if this is the best thing that ever happened to me? I don't want to say by any stretch that a pandemic is what is the best thing. That's not where I'm going here, because actually we all live in fear for those whom we know who are contracted the disease and honoring the social distancing. But there are elements of this experience that you can step back and say, I learned this. I learned that I can survive. I learned that I can adapt. I learned that I can help others. I learned that I can be the person that someone else needs to help make it through the day.
Yeah.
And so that I may do it better, this is what I'll apply.
And let me ask along those lines, what about when you're in, again, whether or not you're in a position of leadership or simply a member of the organization, what about when you're the one in need? And how would you turn that around? So we've spoken a lot about leaders doing the reaching out and doing the caring. What about when you're the leader and you're the one in need and you have that issue, you have that challenge? What do you do with that? And where do you go? What are the do's and don'ts in that situation?
Well, I think it's, first of all, recognizing that that's what you're experiencing. That this is not a function of, I don't have enough intellectual capacity or my educational background or my experience or whatever it is, but just a moment, just stop, deep breath, bit of relaxation and deep breathing and thinking about, all right, what is happening right now and what might I do about it? I think it's critical to be able to step back a little bit and use that phrase about getting on the balcony and looking at what is happening around so you gain some perspective. When I first became a manager of a larger size office, I went through a crisis where we had such a severe drop in staffing that we could barely take care of the clients that chose to come into our office on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And to simply move the crowds, I started helping out in our reception and our intake process. This is before we had all the computerized equipment we have now and so on, but it's just, the concept still applies. And after a while, what started to happen is that there were some leadership tasks that I owned that I was not doing because I became so distracted in putting out the fire someplace else. Okay? And it was a powerful lesson to have. I'm so fortunate that I had it at that point in time in that context before I could either damage myself or the organization. But it was a powerful insight that there are some responsibilities, roles, tasks that are unique to the leader of whatever size organization is, and only you can do those. And you must make the time, must step aside and make the time to get those done. Because if you, it's a little bit of the first responder process that the first responder must take care of themselves, or else there will not be anyone to respond for others. Yeah. And sometimes in a leadership role, you end up in that first responder role and don't realize that that's what you need to do. And in moments of stress, of course, we'll go the extra mile, but you have to find some ways of saving yourself. Sometimes it's as simple as going for a walk inside your house, if you don't have the ability to go for a walk in the backyard. If you're in a location where you can actually leave your abode and have access to the outside world, to go around the block with the proper protection, mask and gloves and whatever you might need these days, to perhaps listen to a bit of music for a bit, if that's something that really uplifts you. A little bit of meditation for a few seconds. We're never going to turn into yogis overnight, but for some of us that doesn't work. But something that takes you away for a moment, breaks that cycle, gives you some spirit, make yourself a nice warm cup of tea.
Also, and I'm sure this is true for everybody, that there are some relationships that somebody I can call and ask for input, for care, to help me refocus and revector. And then there's others whom I would speak with, and then that gets me more ramped up and more anxious and more concerned.
Yes.
So sometimes I have to speak to somebody, but other times I realize, speaking earlier of learning, that it was a choice, and then it's okay. So I have to have some boundaries. And then I am in the situation as a leader where I need to be cared for. I have to be focused and make that request, have boundaries to not pay attention or connect to the relationships or sources that cause me anxiety at times.
That's right.
I have to bracket that and say, okay, let's speak tonight or tomorrow or at a time when I can manage that. But as a leader, I love the way you phrase that. You've got to take care to put your own oxygen mask on first, and then help the person and help others next to you. Because if you don't have your oxygen mask on, you're not going to be of any use to anybody.
That's right. And we forget about that sometimes. We get caught up in the midst of it. I love your point about boundaries. You want to be available, but you need to be available in a way that is that doesn't drain you to the point that you can no longer be effective, because then you will not be able to carry out whatever your mission is. So be able to do that. And it's having some techniques. Sometimes, if I can anticipate that this is a situation where the other person is not able to, on their own, set the boundaries, I will make sure that we only have 10 minutes for the call or 5 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I may ask them to send me in advance a couple of points that they want to make sure we cover. I may need to use a timer at my end to remind me.
Yeah.
Whatever the technique is, but some way of helping the person help themselves and help you.
Yes, and that's another point to this effect that I think some leaders can understandably shy away from caring and reaching out because they feel like, well, I can't solve that person's problem. There's nothing I can do. That's too overwhelming or it's too much. It's like, well, there's a difference between caring and empathizing versus trying to solve their problem or solve the issue.
Yes.
Somebody taking care of an elderly parent, you can't reach out and solve that challenge. But caring about it is different than trying to solve it for somebody.
That's right.
Those kinds of distinctions are, I think, really critical at a time like this.
Yeah. That's a
presence. And,
very powerful point. Caring about it versus caring to solve the situation. It's really that it's a distinction, but I think John, as an aside, that's a point that I think is worth emphasizing and repeating, because I don't think that is in what you see out there in the literature and elsewhere, that is necessarily clear. So as you edit this conversation, make sure that particular point is really salient, because it's really critical.
Yeah. Last, just thoughts on anything practical. So I had a team where they described what they've done is printed out pictures, a team picture, a one pager with everybody's faces and the names, and they each have that on their desk or somewhere in their workspace, on their dining room or wherever they're working from. And it's a very visceral reminder that they're still a team, right? And they still have all the team members because they used to see each other every day. And now they're sort of in this place where they glance one another on a video conference and then poof, everyone's gone. And so it's a reminder that everybody's still there, still connected, still present. Keeping a list of the needs and the situations so that when a team member mentions that they have a child who's not well, or they have a situation with that, you keep track of that and can come back to that and say, hey, how is that going, right? And not just out of sight, out of mind. Any other little tips or strategies that you think might be particularly useful right now?
I think it's a good practice when you come together as a team to do a quick check-in. And you can vary the check-in from session to session. It can be just simply one word, how are you feeling at the moment, kind of a state of mind, point in time check-in. I recently saw on one of the social media sites a lovely check-in concept with hearts following the colors of the rainbow and with definitions for each. So that's a visual that can, bring it right up to you. You can immediately see, well, this is what color heart I'd be today, whatever it might be. Rotating the roles that people play in the team in terms of fluency, because that helps to focus you that I'm going to be the one running the conversation on the next call. Right. So that forces me to pay a little bit more attention to that, get ready for that, takes me away from some of the other things that may have been in my mind.
Sure.
One of the items I plan to do on my next session for a daily check-in is have each participant talk about, I can, fill in the blanks. So have each one just make an affirmative statement. I can walk more, smile more. I can help my neighbor. I can share my the results of my extra cooking with a neighbor. I can, whatever it might be, because that changes it from I can't to I can.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of I can'ts and we can'ts and what we're not to do, and that understandably and appropriately. But in the midst of that, to focus on and remember all the what I can. That's right.
And you can also go to the I will. One word, okay? You can also change those quick check-ins in terms of something you're grateful for. What makes you smile today, okay? Or do a check-in around or check out around a word of kindness for someone else. I want to acknowledge, what do you wish to acknowledge about someone else who's been kind to you today or has been nice? Whether it's the mailman dropping a box on your front step so you don't have to go someplace else, whether it's a neighbor giving you an extra piece of cake, whether it's the fact that the sun is out and it brings me joy to be able to, that I have a window that I can look at and see the sun.
Now, let me ask you a question. How much of this, when we talk about this reach out and connect and care, how much can be delegated? How much of that role needs to be played by, I'll say the leader, obviously that varies, by the leader? How much could they delegate across that spectrum?
I don't think that this is so much as something to delegate, but something that becomes part of your leadership presence, and by modeling the behavior, you inspire others to do the same for their teams.
Yeah.
Right? So if I am addressing a team of leaders, I will ask each member of that team of leaders, what are you doing as a check-in, as a reassurance, as a point within your teams? So there's an expectation, A, that you will be doing something, and let's do some brainstorming about what's working for you. Let's have a sharing of ideas. Because that's a positive way of having a creative conversation versus send me a memo with your list. You know? Yeah. So I am, how might we, you know, and I love, one of my favorite phrases to use, and something I would encourage leaders to use, in whether it's in a one-on-one conversation or in a conversation with a broader group, is engage, open that conversation. So how might we better connect with each other? How might we better take care of each other? How might we, it opens up, creates a very safe space. And how might we prevent something from happening? You can use it for any number of circumstances, but that phrase opens up possibilities. It doesn't go to blaming, it doesn't go to failure, it doesn't predetermine outcomes, but it's just right out there. So if nothing else, how might
within the boundaries that we're given. That we have.
Exactly. And using the we makes a connection that it's not how might you.
Yeah.
Right? Not that it's not appropriate or okay to say how might, depends on the circumstance, but if you're trying to create a sense of shared commitment, shared interest, shared community, you're not in this by yourself, we're in this together. How might we? Bring me into your space. Share, how might you share what you're experiencing? How might I be of assistance to what you're experiencing? Because assistance may be financial, but it may also be simply a quick call or simply a nod of the head on the memo that I get it, I understand, I see it.
Yeah, and that's the point to emphasize for leaders, for leaders who don't find this a natural inclination. Be authentic. It's not about, you know, faking it or doing something that feels unnatural.
Yes.
Start with, like you were saying earlier, start with small steps, with something that is authentic, that is natural, that you can do. How might I reach out? How might I connect? And then it could grow from there, but do something, right? Don't just shy away from it and abdicate that need to connect and keep people.
Yes, you know, and sometimes when you were talking earlier about what people might do, they have photos of the team or whatever. I worked with a wonderful, wonderful leader who was present on the scene when on 9/11, when the plane crashed into the Pentagon. And he, to this day, keeps a little bit of metal from the scene, tiny bit, from the plane that crashed in. And he carries it with him because that reminds him that he is part of a greater universe, that terrible things that happen, but we can survive, that we can make a difference, and what we do matters. He was part of the recovery effort and the reconstruction and so on, and has a very successful civil servant. But the point is that really grounds him and reminds him. And sometimes when he may be having a poor day, that also reminds him that there are worse things that have happened and we have survived and we're moving forward. And he's still here to enjoy the day in whatever shape or form he's still. And it's somebody who has recently struggled with major illness unrelated to the virus. And still that gives him wellness. So sometimes we have a little token, something that has some meaning to us, whether it's a child's photograph or a memento from an event I attended or whatever it might be. So having a conversation with folks about, is there something that is symbolic to you, that means something to you?
First and foremost, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your thoughts and the input and the compassion that you're showing just in your own work and as you continue to engage in the thoughts and encouragement for leaders. Thank you. And please let me know if there's anything I can do. And really appreciate the time and your thoughts in the midst of all that you're about right now. Stay well.
Thank you.
Blessings on you and your family and your friends and, you know, around the world. So,
same here. And blessings to you. I am so fortunate to count you on my circle of friends and people that I care deeply about. So good luck.
It's great to see you, and we'll look forward to the next in-person.
Yes, it will happen.
Even greater relish. Those are going to be some great get-togethers, aren't they?
That's right. Take care, John.
All right. Take care, Bye-bye. Thank you.